And now with me in studio are Daniel Gutwein, historian at Haifa University, and Douglas Altabef, executive board member of Im Tirtzu. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me for this broadcast. I want to begin with something we heard earlier today, this hour. British Prime Minister Theresa May is, of course, saying she will celebrate this event. Prime Minister Netanyahu is also there. Members of the Palestinian Authority, though, have called for an apology from the UK and for protests in front of British embassies across the world. I doubt you would agree that an apology is needed.
No, of course I don't agree. I think it's a great day. It's an important day. Prime Minister Netanyahu is there, as he said, as a partner to the British Prime Minister, which is a remarkable thing when you think back on this, because 100 years ago we were in effect supplicants, and the great significance of the Balfour Declaration is a validation of the 20-plus years leading up to it, very frustrating years of the Zionist leadership. So that validation was a tremendously energizing move on behalf of the Jewish people. So it's actually quite stunning to see the Israeli Prime Minister returning as a peer, not as a supplicant, hardly a supplicant, to the British Prime Minister today. So no, of course it's not something to be apologized for.
Well, of course Palestinians are calling for that apology because they see the Balfour Declaration as a symbol for their own aspirations for statehood being quashed or delayed. But at this point, would an apology even matter?
No, it wouldn't matter, and to be more correctly historically, one have to say that the Balfour Declaration was only one step that the British government of the time took to enlarge her imperialistic rule of the Middle East. Now, the Balfour Declaration was one step. The Arab Revolt of Lawrence was another, and British connection with Armenian nationalists was the next one. So when we're speaking about Balfour Declaration, we're speaking about one promise of three. And the Arab nationalists in Iraq, in Syria, in Transjordan, were giving by the British gave them the same thing that they gave in the Balfour Declaration. And that is that they used the Jewish nationalism, the Arab nationalism, and the Armenian nationalism to advance British imperialism in the Middle East. So I think that the Palestinians weren't a part to it because there was no Palestinian nationalism at that time. Palestinians were believed to be part of the greater Arab nationalism, and from the British point of view, they share to the Arab nationalism by their contacts with the Sharif Hussein from Mecca, and so the Palestinians were mentioned in the Balfour Declarations only as individuals, as the inhabitants of the country, known as a nation as it's for itself. And I believe that is a mixture of history and contemporary politics by all the things that apology of what? Of giving an Arab nationalism its part, Jewish and Armenian. Of course, the Armenian didn't get along with because of the other things that we know that happened in 1917. So I think historically this demand for apology has no reason, and politically I can understand it, but not historically.
So as you begin to mention, a lot had to happen between 1917 and 1947 until the eventual establishment of the State of Israel. So are we giving the UK today way too much credit?
No, we're not. It's not that we are giving. Yes, we are giving them credit, and I think it's credit that is deserved, because remember, this was the first time that any European sovereign granted some legitimacy, some support, some imprimatur of validation to Zionist efforts. And in that sense, it was far more important to us than it was to them. I mean, Danny makes a very interesting point that the British were playing a very perhaps a cynical game with a territory that they didn't even control. This was aspirational on their part. If we controlled the Ottoman Empire, so to speak, this is what we're prepared to do. But we heard something very different. What we heard was someone is finally giving credence to the aspiration to become a state. Now, a few years later, you have San Remo. San Remo is yet another step. In fact, it's a very significant step because it included a grant of Transjordan to be part of a Jewish state. The British get scared about that. They whittle that down. But this is the beginning of a very important process.
And I want to discuss with you that term, a national home, that was used then, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit in the UK. And we will right after this break. Stay with us.